Alright guys, part 3 to the Groomsmen Swords build. Like you have been watching, I've made 5 of these. This video is going to be pretty long. I'm going to keep it kind of a short intro. It's going to cover all of the grinding that I did to pretty much everything on the handle. Both the handle and the accent, the pommel and the guard. Again, 5 of these, 2 parts per each sword. So a lot of grinding, a lot of parts, so it's going to be a long video. But hopefully you guys dig it. If you want to learn how to grind, see different ways to grind, different belts. Not necessarily belts, but different setups for your grinder. I do the small wheel attachment, I do the flat planting, all kinds of different angles and stuff like that. So it's a good watch, it's a fun watch. Like I said, really long, so I'll cut it short. But hopefully you guys are digging these videos, and catch you on the next one.
Alright guys, well here we go. So to start out, I'm using the TW90. It's a horizontal vertical belt grinder. I know I've talked about it quite a bit. For anyone new, I'll just go ahead and reiterate a lot of the stuff I've said in previous videos. But it's a really great grinder if you're getting into blade making, shaping, anything like that. It's a really great tool to have. A little on the pricey side, but absolutely worth it. Like the name says, it's a grinder that will go horizontally, which is the way I have it now, and it'll also go vertically. A lot of knife makers out there have to buy 2 separate machines. One is a vertical and one is a horizontal. This combines both, which is a really fun addition. But right now I'm just working the curves, working the shapes. I've got a 1/2 inch small wheel attachment on the belt grinder and believe a 60 grit, 50 grit, 60 grit belt on there. I really like working with curves, working with shapes, trying to get things to contour each other, to kind of blend, not so disarray with these grinds right here, trying to be pretty precise, trying to follow the lines, follow the curves, and also create something that's going to feel good in the hand. This is going to be the outside portion of the handle, so I wanted to have a nice feel to it. The tool rest that comes with the TW90 is, I want to say it's maybe about 3 inches by 6 inches, maybe 4 inches by 6 inches. But I kind of made this makeshift tool rest that you see me working on now, and it's actually mounted to the original tool rest. I just drilled some holes and ran some bolts through them. You can see them resting under my hands. Those bolts are what's connecting this basically steel plate to the tool rest. Like I said, this is a pretty long video. I'll probably come in, come out. I won't talk throughout the whole 47 minutes. But it's a lot of the repetitive process, basically playing with angles. I'll chime in when I switch to the flat platen, and when I switch over to the large 12-inch contact wheel. Depending on the contour you're trying to get, you could use a flat grind. I even have a larger 3-inch contact wheel. This basically goes on that same small wheel attachment, clips in and clips out. But whatever angle you're trying to grind, you can switch out. And here I am just doing some freehand grinds. I've got the tool rest there, just kind of as support, not necessarily following any angle for these little guys. Just trying to get something that looks consistent. You know, in the last video when I was talking about this upcoming video, when I said this is the fun part, I really do like doing the grinds, like doing texturing. You know, the next video, it'll be all about the blade itself. You know, I texture the spine and I hollow grind the actual blade itself, and I love hollow grinds. I know they're not always practical, but you know, I love the way it looks. Love doing it on any, you know, blade, knife, cleaver that I make. It just reflects the light really fun. And like in the last video, you know, where I said you're doing multiple parts as almost like a production run. It's really good. Just put on tunes. You know, if you're into podcast in the background, and just get into the groove. You know, I know some people requested these longer videos, not to be so sped up. This video being sped up is 47 minutes, and I have it at, I believe, 800%. So I had to speed it up for time's sake. Otherwise, it would be like a 2-week long video. And there we go. Now these guard parts, I'll go in and out from each section. Like I'll go through and I'll do all the parts of the same grind, and then do the mirror of them. Because on the face of the sword, one is facing one way, the other's facing the opposite. But you know, I'll do the same grind throughout all 6. Because, like I said, I did an extra set of all the parts. Not the blade, but all the smaller pieces, just in case, you know, to practice grinds, see if there's something that I want to change up. But again, it's really fun working with the curves of the part. You know, trying to accentuate what's already there. Now, from the last video, when we left off, I sharpied all the edges of these parts, and I used my calipers to make that reference line. And that line there is what's keeping me, you know, consistent throughout all the parts, to make sure I'm hitting the same angle and going the same depth. Just kind of free-handed that little guy right there. Such a small spot, I didn't want to go at too steep of an angle, so I just go ahead and hold it where it's at, eyeball it, just work it a little bit. You know, the horsepower of the grinder itself, combined with the heavy grit, it really chews through the steel. These 2 points here, well, the single 1 point, but the grind, you know, on the left and the right side, just real touchy to get. You know, a lot of the other grinds, they can vary a little bit, but where that peak meets, I definitely want the left and the right side to both match. So it's just a little bit of finessing, a little bit of just touching the wheel and then backing it off. Alright, or have set up on the flat plane. I can't remember what angle of degree that I've got that at, you know, but I'll vary it and play with it, you know, to whatever looks good. And this particular grind, I was trying to go real heavy on the outside. I kind of have that face of the grind taper as it comes up. Yeah, there we go. So I didn't necessarily use that guideline other than for the tip, just as a point of reference to go, you know, the tip won't be ground any further than this line. So I'm going real heavy at the edge and then just real light as I curve it back around. You will get a little bit of a burr if you go a little heavy-handed on the grinds, but nothing you can't flick off with your finger. If you notice, when I started out the video, I wasn't wearing gloves. Depending on what grind I'm doing will depend on what gloves I wear, if I wear gloves, or if I use a water assist. Essentially, these grinds right here, how long it's in contact with that belt obviously generates a lot of heat through the part. Not just at that edge, but it'll start, heating up the whole part in itself. So just some light duty gloves is good enough for these. Now when I get to the pommel, that will be a different story because those are generating heat throughout pretty much the length of the part. I even put on some thicker gloves on top of these gloves, and it was still just a little bit too hot. So when we get to that point, you'll go ahead and see what the water assist is. Alright, just gonna get that little flat part right there. There we go. And for a straight edge like that, the flat platen is a really good surface to grind against, just because it keeps that grind nice and square. When you're grinding interior radiuses, the small wheel or any type of circular surface is a good way to grind. Because trying to eat away at an interior with the flat platen, it's just really tough. You'll have little chunks taken out here and there. It's really hard to smooth out. Yeah, I think it was the small one that I did not go with. Yeah, that top one. I was like, that's a little too small. And sometimes when I'm playing around with with a new part, with new grinds, especially when I have multiple parts, I can try one grind just kind of going into it real easy, and then try another one a little bit more aggressive. And usually it's the one that's a little bit more aggressive that I go with, but it's good to have something as far as a reference. There we go. And that's why, like I said, I cut an extra set of all of these parts just in case. Alright, so here I am on the 3-inch contact wheel, and I'm doing that interior curve that I was just talking about. If you try and do that on a flat platen, you're just going to be kind of using the edge of the belt and the edge of the platen, and it's really, really, really tough to get a nice smooth contour. There we go. But like I said, with a circular surface to grind against. Anything that's close to the radius, it's really nice, easy work. It can be done with a smaller contact wheel. It'll just take a lot more, finesse and more time, that's for sure. And again, I'm just following the contours of the part, trying to taper into that flat and get nice and thick grind to the edge. And there's no right or wrong way, how to grind something, or even how to, follow a contour when you do grind. You could take different angles, you can take different steps. You could just follow that contour straight all the way up. You wouldn't have to taper it. It just depends on the look you're going for. All right, now this area here on the final part of the sword itself, it's almost like a thumb recessed. These parts are recessed so that the blade essentially sticks out, kind of like a thumb rest. Has jimping on it, for a little thumb grip, but it has a slight curve to it. So again, if you put it on the flat platen, you'll have a straight, cross side to side grind. But since it has that slight curve, I'm using the small wheel just to kind of give it that curve, follow the edge. This is kind of what I was talking about on that last grind where I had the 3-inch contact wheel on there. If you had a wheel, with a diameter of the edge that you're grinding against, you know, you could just press it right up against. But on this one, I'm just going real slow, dragging it across, following that contour as I curve around. Okay. Now the pommel. So these are the fun parts. These two little edges here. Just real fun to just get in there and accentuate the whole part. And it's not until I get to the edges of these that it starts getting really hot. But like I said, I'll go part by part. I'll do each setup, and then move on to the next part with the same grinds. Well, like I said, the horsepower of this machine with the belt on there, you can just shove your part right against it and it just eats away that steel. Alright, now that setup is done. And now we're set up to do the edges. And this is where I'm you know, just kind of slowly working this in, trying to figure out what angle I want to approach this at. And now my left thumb is just barely kind of touching the part because that part is starting to heat up. So now I move on to the next part, because that one's already pretty hot. Maybe finesse it a little bit more. And now I'm switching between the two. And now I've got some really thick gloves on top of the gloves I was wearing. And it's definitely still coming through the heat. Alright. So now, for some reason, I had a little hiccup of a video, but now I have it set up with the water assist with it. This is basically a misting system. I hook it up to my air compressor, and in that bucket right over there on the left side is water. And this misting system basically has two tubes. One has an air inlet and one has a water inlet. And it runs through, and essentially once it gets to that tip right there that you see, it spits out water. You can adjust, you know, a fine stream, a thick stream. You know, you can dial down your compressor's PSI for, you know, even finer, so it doesn't come out so fast. But it is a complete and total game changer, especially if you're doing, you know, small parts with a lot of grinding on them, or if you're doing you know, grinding on any type of tool steel. It's a good assist to not heat up your blade, or if you're doing really long grinds across the whole face of the blade, you don't have to keep stopping and dipping into water and then taking it out and resetting up your grind. It's just a continuous keep on going. You can, in the bucket, put in a coolant instead of water. I've tried it, and it's pretty minimal as far as, you know, what I'm using it for. The water works just fine for me. and it's a heck of a lot cheaper. And you know, if you're grinding something that gets too hot, you can always put ice in the water and it cools it down. You know, right now I use, you know, not ice cold, but you know, tap cold water, and it comes out just fine. You know, fine enough that you can obviously see I'm grinding both sides of the part without wearing any gloves, just barehanded. And if there's any other way that I can grind, it's always going to be barehanded. You know, I know there's probably going to be people out there that say it's just very unsafe, but it gives you a better hold on your part. And to have gloves on, it's not, it kind of makes me more nervous, because if that glove catches as that belt is spinning down, and it, you know, basically pins the material of your glove with the belt and the tool rest, then that's not going to be a good day. I haven't had it happen yet. Knock on wood that it doesn't ever happen. But, you know, I love grinding just freehand. No gloves or anything like that. I will say with the water assist, I typically do have nitrolite gloves on. You still keep that grip, but your hands don't get wet and pruny like you've been in the pool for too long. Now you see me toss the parts into the bucket as soon as I'm done grinding each one. It's not because they're hot, it's because they are wet. And if I did this amount of parts one by one, and as soon as it was done, if I just set it down while it being wet, by the time I got done, you know, the first few parts would be starting to rust. So as long as you keep it in water, then it's not going to rust. It's once that water has contact with air for a longer period of time, then it starts to oxidize, and then your rust will set in. You know, even those bits of shaving that you see on the tool rest down there, they'll pile up on the ground, and you'll have a little pile of of rusty bits. Alright, so now we're in the accent piece, the center piece of the handle. And here, again, like I said, I like to play around with the curves. I like to accentuate what curves are already there. This being inside the other part, I want to make sure that they're following the curves that I ground, you know, as details in the outer portion of the handle. And again, that line that I scribed on these is just to make sure that I'm staying flush with the outer parts of the handle, because those are 3/16 thick. These parts here are 1/4 inch thick, so there's about an 1/8 inch difference between the two. So when I grind this down, I don't want to have any edges. I want to have it, you know, just fluidly contour into the outside of the handle. So right now I'm just doing the big main grinds that I'm trying to get in, and I will work around, you know, all the other areas. You know, I'm back again wearing gloves just because the grinds on these little tiny parts, even this small amount of grinding on the edge, on the tip right there, it does start to generate heat, so it's good to have some protection at least for that. And that's where I'm talking about, trying to get that grind to follow flush to the outer handle. Again, just following the curves of the part, trying to accentuate what's already there. Give it a nice big grind that tapers out. And you know, like I said, there's no, you know, right way or wrong way of doing these types of grinds. You know, you could set your angle on that tool rest and run one continuous grind around the whole part, so it has just one, you know, basically chamfer all the way around. But it's really just, you know, what kind of look you're going for. For some reason, the look that I like is a lot of texture. A lot of curves. You know, things that'll bounce the light off. You know, things that you can use to, you know, accentuate the part as far as, you know, high spots, low spots. On these particular blades, it'll show once they're Cerakoted. On my typical parts, like the fantasy sword that I had done, it's where I use the metal blackening agent. The birchwood Casey, sorry about that, I kind of went brain dumb. The birchwood Casey, it's basically a gun bluing solution, and it basically makes your steel, you know, a dark blue, almost black. And I like doing that, and then hitting it with some sandpaper after that, and makes all the little details that you've ground in just, you know, pop. All the deep spots that you ground stay nice and dark, and all the high spots are nice and shiny. You know, it just gives a different look and feel of the part. And for these little guys here, just doing little grinding nibs, freehand, no set, you know, angle, just using my hands, pressing it against it. And just following the curvature of the part again. Here the angle grinder is set to the vertical position with a flat platen. And again, just making sure that it's coming down just flush with the outside of the handle. And was do such large runs of parts, you start kind of getting a groove down, getting a feel. Each one as you go, the same grind gets a little easier. Figure out how to do it a little quicker. Now see how I did the two separate, those ones curved, the last ones I had just a straight edge to. I did half and half, just a variation. In the end, you really can't tell because of these little detail grinds that I put in there. But I was just playing around with grinds. Like I said, there's a million ways to do each one. And once I add those in, you can't really tell which one was quite flat, which one was quite curved. On these little tiny grinds that I'm doing here, just trying to really kiss the material, make sure it stays in the right spot. I do have a 1/4 inch, I believe it's a 1/4 inch, maybe a 3/8 small wheel. That would probably have worked better, but the bearings on them, I've gone through 3 of them really quickly. Like if you put any pressure, like right now I'm putting a little bit of pressure on the small wheel itself. On the 3/8 or 1/4 inch ones that I have, it's just like any amount of pressure just makes the bearings go out, and they just don't work very well. So realign with a new angle and just kind of making up new grinds as I go at this point. You know, like I said, it's just up to whatever you like. Alright, so I think there's just one more grind at the very ears, the very tips of those parts. Yeah, right up there. And then we would call those, I believe that's it, yeah. That would be it, calling it done. These little grinds here, like, you could just barely kiss the belt, and it would just disappear. So real tight, real finessed. Yeah, it's always good to have that last little bit that you're doing be something you could be be quick with. All right. And there we go. There's the whole group of parts once they're all done. That's basically going to conclude this video. I appreciate you guys watching. The next video is going to be all about grinding the blades. I believe I recorded all 5 blades. I'm not exactly sure, but it'll be the hollow grind, the edge grind, the tip grind, as well as all the texturing down the spine. So thanks for watching.